it's Dr. Hannah Cho again. Happy New Year. It's the year 2020. And I keep coining the term that 2020 is the year of the optometrist. So I'm super excited about what's to come for optometrists, specifically for private optometry offices. I do feel like right now is a really good time to start disrupting and creating innovative ideas and have it more towards the private practice side rather than the bigger corporation side. So just really super excited about what's to come. I wanted to film an updated video just to let you guys know what's been going on because it's been a while since I last made a video. Just in a nutshell, basically I just signed the lease agreement for 2 offices. They're both in Orange County. Now that the lease is signed, I can go ahead and share with you guys the cities that it's going to be located in. One will be in Costa Mesa, and the other one is going to be in Fountain Valley. Now is kind of where the exciting and the fun part starts. I have to start looking for staff. And again, all of this, I'll be able to document it so you guys can get an idea of what to do when you guys do your own practices. The fun part is that these 2 offices are going to be kind of like prototypes, meaning I'm going to be able to share all the ideas that I wanted to implement in a new office, and I can kind of basically make it exactly how I want to do it. I know that all of my ideas aren't going to be hits. There's going to be some misses, but just trying to figure out what really works for a private practice in this day and age, because the practices that are being used right now, the traditional model, I don't feel like it's really going to hold up in the next decade. So my goal is to come up with a flow with all the benefits and the best part of the retail and also the best parts of patient care. The private practitioners typically do very well, and kind of make it into one really good, solid, innovative office. With that said, I do get approached with questions from new optometrists, younger optometrists that are interested in opening practices. And it seems like a lot of it is very similar. So I wanted to go ahead and address some of the questions here, just in case you guys had the same questions. One of them being, basically, do I feel like right now is a good time to own a practice? And the answer to that is a resounding yes for me. And the reason why it's probably surprising to a lot of people is because of the way that the environment is nowadays. You have all these existing practices. They've been running for the past 20 to 40 years in the same way, with small changes like upgrading to like an EHR or bringing in new equipment. But the way that the traditional optometry office has been run the same way for the past few decades. Now, when you have all these new private equity backed companies, they have a lot more resources that can afford them the latest equipment, the best prices on frames, lenses, creating a larger profit margin in the long run. And you see all these private equity companies that are coming in because they do feel like healthcare is always a good, safe bet. And I do agree with them. I do think it's a very safe bet. Rarely do you hear about optometry offices that go bankrupt. It usually is that, they might have less net profit. Sorry, I kind of lost my train of thought. My daughters came in the door. They're on vacation right now. I think, what was I talking about? Oh, private equities. So yes, there's a lot more resources that they have. They're able to centralize a lot of the expenses, and it cuts down on the cost, and it does better for each practice. Now, the only way that this works for private equity is if they have a lot of practices within their ownership. So it doesn't work with just one private practice. They have to have a lot, and then they're able to centralize and start saving money. Then they get more of a net margin. The reason why I still believe that it's a really good time to own a practice, start a practice, buy a practice, whatever it is because I do feel like, although not every optometrist is made to be a business person, all optometrists have the capability of learning all the how-tos for business. I feel like everything can be trained, and so that's the part that's very exciting. Optometrists, all the ones that I've met, they're just really great at patient care. They know how to treat patients. Everyone has the competency to do that. But I think the business side, because it's not an inherent skill, it's something that needs to be trained. And all the optometrists I've met so far have the capability of learning all of that. That's why I feel like it's such a good time still to run a business. And I know that a lot of the optometrists that I talk to, that's kind of always been their end goal. They go into optometry school to eventually own their own practice. And I think a lot of optometrists really like the idea of having ownership over their work. They typically don't really like being employed. There are some cases, yes, that some optometrists may feel like that and they don't mind giving up the ownership and they don't mind going and clocking in hours and seeing the number of patients that is dictated by somebody else. But I feel like just from personal experience, it's a lot smaller of a percentage than the overall population. I do feel like with the right tools, optometrists are able to do it. So yes, I do feel like it is a good time to do it and it can be very profitable. This leads me to the other question. It's kind of like a very general, like, where do you start? Where should I start? And for me, the number one thing that you guys have to do is do your market research. Check the city of where you want to live eventually and see what the demand is for an optometrist there. Start looking for location, because location is actually the thing that can take the longest time. Same thing that I'm learning as I did now and with my previous experience. Even if you find that perfect location, the negotiations of going back and forth with the lease agreement will take a while. Even after you sign it, that's when the tenant improvement starts, and then you start building out your space, and that can take, depending on how much work you have to do, anywhere from 2 months to up to a year even. So that definitely takes the longest time, and you want to make sure you account for that. So if you're looking to open a practice, let's say by next year, work backwards and kind of just start looking for a place. I would say give about a year, 9 months to a year at least, to find that perfect location, because it takes some time to find it in the beginning. And then at the same time, you should be looking for good deals for equipment and also financing. See how your finances look right now. If you have family members that are able to help support you, that's great. That's probably the most commonly used route. Other than that, if you wanted to look for outside third-party financing, there are some banks that are more used to financing cold start optometry practices or even purchasing existing practices. So there are a lot of options for that. And I think also start looking for employees. Start looking to see if there's anyone within your circle that might be a good fit. Typically, the employment requires a front desk, like a receptionist, someone to greet the patients when they come in, an optician, someone that's going to help you with the sales of glasses if you're going to have an optical. And this is a really nice to have, not a need to have at this point, but an optometric tech, somebody that will help you with the pre-testing and scribing and kind of doing the handoff between the front desk and then the optometrist. So, okay, so I think a couple hours has passed since the last time you saw me. I had to make some lunch and I also had a meeting. So let me try to get back into the groove of answering questions. The question is, how much does it cost to start a practice? This is a very wide range of an answer because it really depends on what you're trying to create. If you're trying to create the latest and greatest using all the latest technology and you want to go all in and just do it right from the beginning, expect to spend about maybe $250K to all the way up to like $500K. It really depends. Again, very wide range. If you want to just do the bare minimum, I think you can get by with 250. But if you want to go all in and start with the big pizzazz at the beginning, then I think maybe 400 to 500 would be a good budget to start with. The other question that she asked was, how does it work with outside investors or even partners in general? I think for other investors, it gets a little bit more complicated because sometimes the outside investors aren't always an optometrist. And so it gets a little bit hazy because yes, they are an investor, but they're not doing the work of seeing patients, if that's the way that you're going to set it up. And so to be honest, if you talk to 3 different consultants or private practice advocates, most likely you're going to get 3 different answers. It really ultimately boils down to what you're comfortable with. And I think also your relationship with that investor, if it's a close friend and you guys have a very long-term relationship and you trust each other, I think it can be a lot more flexible. And because you guys have each other's best interests at heart, it can turn into a very mutually beneficial relationship. If it's more strictly a business relationship, I think it makes more sense to have everything set out at the very beginning, being very strict and making sure that you guys cover all different kinds of scenarios, especially the worst case scenario. So there's not like a straightforward answer for that. It really boils down to whatever you and the investor are comfortable with, and that does take time. There is going to be a lot of back and forth, a lot of negotiations, a lot of what ifs, and the best thing to do is actually to have a list of all the main topics that you guys want to cover, and then from there kind of come up with like a very robust train of thought on both sides, and then coming to an agreement on that topic. If it's more like a partnership, meaning it's more with another optometrist or an OD, it's a little bit more simpler because now you can quantify the time that each person can put into, let's say, like patient care or marketing. It's a lot more quantifiable. You know, you can maybe sit down. You still have to go through all these points and topics and make sure that you guys are on the same page, and also, you know, again, have a worst case scenario just in case it does happen. But I think you guys can also be better about, you know, doing your schedule. So let's say one person wants to work part-time or has kids and they don't have as much time to offer in terms of patient care, but they're really good at the marketing side, which can be done remotely. So it's kind of like a trade-off. Again, it always boils down to whatever each person is comfortable with. And that's always going to be the case no matter what. There will be some, I guess, similar situations, and that's a good time to kind of talk to consultants about. But each case is very different, like all the consultants will tell you, and there will be a lot of negotiating and a lot of difference in the way that it's settled because everybody is different. So this question was, what mistakes and lessons did I learn opening my practice? I think I covered this in the other videos before, but the main one was something that I actually did live by, and I feel like that kind of helped me stay successful with that practice, and that was to stay lean. I know it's very tempting to go out and kind of create this ideal dream practice at the end, like your end goal, and just kind of manifesting it at the very beginning. And I know that I told you guys a couple questions back that the cost of starting up can range, and if you wanted to do like your dream practice off the bat, it would cost, you know, a lot more, like $400,000 to $500,000. But especially if you don't have experience in opening a practice or running a practice at the beginning, I would say stay very lean at the beginning, because I know you can kind of get into the thoughts process that you have to have the latest and greatest to be competitive with other practices. And what can be a differentiating factor, the easiest thing is to have better equipment, better quality stuff, right? I know that's very tempting to do, but I think if you haven't thought through the whole process, like how much money is it going to generate realistically if I get an optometer machine, for example, that one doesn't necessarily turn into profit right away, meaning you can't charge a patient more money for utilizing an optometer versus a manual optometer, right? Like you're going to get reimbursed the same amount regardless of the method of refraction. So you have to be very careful for stuff like that. Just think if this new gadget can generate more income for your practice or not, and be realistic. I mean, if you're going to put in $100,000 into an equipment, realistically, you're not just buying it to say that your practice is the latest and greatest. It has to have some kind of return on investment, right? So you have to be very careful on what you purchase, and also make sure that it's going to generate money or something in return over the long haul. The other lesson that I learned is don't be afraid to reach out. I never did anything alone. I always made sure I reached out to doctors that already own practices, or ones that were very notable in the optometry world, asked their opinions, asked them what they did right, and also more importantly, what they did wrong. You can always learn from the mistakes of other optometrists, and that's going to save you a lot of money and time because you won't have to go through that, hopefully. I would say reach out. Don't be scared. If you guys have any questions, you guys can always reach out to me directly. You guys already have my email address, but in case, it's iedoccho@gmail.com, which is EYEDOCCHO@gmail.com. Yeah, just don't be afraid to reach out. There's a lot of resources out there for you. Even the sales reps, like the contact lens sales reps, the frame line sales reps, and the lens sales reps, they all have a very good bearing on the local area that you're located in. So they'll have access to other doctors, and it might be a good way to get introduced to another doctor and see if you can pick their brain on what they did correctly and what they feel like they should have done better. The other question was, is there a checklist for someone who's never opened a practice or ran a practice before? I think what she was asking was, is there like a template of like what needs to be done for a practice to be set up correctly? There isn't one that I know of. I know that Covalent Careers, they had something, it was kind of like a book that some of the doctors from Vision Source and then partnered up and they created, so you can look that up online. But I think because, okay, so let's backtrack a little bit. Yes, there are a lot of core things that needs to be done for most of the optometry practices, right? And so you can probably find a checklist for that kind of stuff. But I think the part that she's probably touching on and what you guys probably have more questions about is the business side. Like, is there a checklist of what needs to be done on the business side to make sure that we're running a successful practice or we're setting it up to be a very successful practice? It's hard because I wish that there was a solution that I can give you guys that worked for all practice locations. But the truth is there's just so many different ways that we can. Okay, so I'm so determined to make sure I finish this so that I have the same outfit on and I can finish the same day so I don't lose my train of thought. Let me keep going with the questions. If there's a checklist, I don't know if I finished answering that question, but basically for each location, it does differ. And so there's not like a checklist that would work for everybody. It kind of is a case-by-case basis. And the last question that she had was, how long does it take for a business to open up for business? And I think the general timeline is probably from when you start finding a location all the way to opening date. I would say anticipate anywhere from 8 months to a year. And like I said before, the main time-consuming part is finding the perfect location, and then from there it's coming to an agreement for the lease agreement, figuring out how you want to lay it out, and then from there it depends on how fast your contractors work to make the space to your liking. And so I would say anywhere from 8 months to a year. I know some build out are very time intensive, and depending on the condition of the space from the beginning, it can be even longer than that. So anticipate a year just to be safe for most regular sized optometry offices. Okay, so that's going to take care of it for now. If you guys have any other questions, please feel free to shoot me an email at idoccho@gmail.com, and I'll definitely try to answer any questions that you guys have. And I'm going to start filming a little bit more day-to-day on exactly what's going on, because it's going to be a lot more speedy, because we are actually doing 2 offices at once, and it's going to take a lot more. Even though it's 2 offices, it actually isn't 2 separate businesses, so it won't be too time consuming. Basically, even though it's not going to be time consuming, it is going to take a lot of work to get it to that level that I want it to be. So I'll take you guys along for the ride. So yeah, let me know if you guys have any questions, and I'll see you guys in the next episode. Bye.